Well, I have been watching the um, debate between Richard Dawkins and William Lane Craig and others, and I haven't gone all the way through it. It's a bit strange, actually. The format, they're given like 3 minutes to speak, and then like somebody else goes, and there's like 20 different people that they cycle through, and then some guy gets up and talks about string theory for 2 minutes, and then I I don't know. It's weird. Anyways, I think I've gone through the opening speeches, the rebuttals, and the closing speeches of the main debaters, which on the side of atheism, and I need to qualify this a little bit, which I'll do in a minute. But on the side of atheism, you have Richard Dawkins, Michael Shermer from Skeptic Magazine, and I forget the third guy. On the side of theism, you have one Jewish man, uh, Rabbi Wolpe, I think is his last name. Doug Givet is the second one, and William Lane Craig. So two Christians and a Jewish man versus the three skeptics. Now, there's some observations that I wanted to make about this debate, and certainly my own bias as a Christian believer and Christian apologist is going to color what I will say. I would like to hear people that disagree with me what they thought of the debate, because it seems like the people on the side of atheism don't really know what's going on. and, and the debate itself is kind of ambiguous. The question for resolution is not does God exist? Rather, the question for resolution is there meaning and purpose in the universe, or does the universe have purpose and meaning? But and I didn't realize that when I first started listening to it, because it seemed like the different speakers weren't really addressing. Even William Lane Craig wasn't really addressing the main issue. God does or does not exist. But then it became clear that wasn't the issue that they're resolving. But it is ambiguous whether the question is, and maybe this is explained in Spanish. The MC speaks mostly in Spanish, and then the rest of the people are speaking mostly in English. So I may be missing some vital information there because I don't speak Spanish. But it's not entirely clear to me whether it's the universe itself that is said to have meaning or to lack it, or people within the universe that have objective meaning and purpose. And the comment of the rabbi I thought was helpful when he said that everybody can agree, the 6 people on the panel, everybody can agree that there are purposes. Different people will have their own goals in life and paths that they pursue and so on. But the atheists, he said, cannot have meaning. They can have purposes, but they cannot have purpose. In other words, the universe itself does not have an overarching purpose without God. If there's a God, then He could have created things so that men would arise directly, de novo, or by means of evolution. And we can have there can be a purpose for humanity, but there cannot be a purpose for humanity if a purpose was not given to it, if humanity was not created with a purpose in mind by God. But we can have purposes we want to do good at our jobs, we love our families, so and so on and so forth. So I think that was a helpful distinction that he made. It's too bad that the moderator was not speaking in English, because maybe he made all this stuff more clear. Now, the first person to speak was the one whose name I forgot. I'd never, I think it's like Michael Ridley or something like that. I'd never heard of this person before. And he, in his opening speech, which lasted for, I think, 6 minutes, um, he essentially said that we are not living in the best of all possible worlds. That was his opening speech. We're not living in the best of all possible worlds, and he cashed that out by quoting Voltaire and so on, and talking about Leibniz and that whole controversy there from back at that time. Michael Shermer spoke and said that we have purposes, and this was before the Jewish man made the distinction. He said that we have different purposes that we can kind of construct for ourselves, but perhaps no overarching objective purpose. And then Richard Dawkins got up and said that because we know that evolution is true scientifically, therefore we can rule out the existence of God. And he explicitly said there is no purpose in life. So Shermer said, yes, there is some purpose. Ridley, or whatever his name is, I'm just kind of rushing through this. I don't really have enough. I want to come back later and do a more thoughtful video, perhaps. Yeah, so that was the three opening speeches. William Lane Craig, in his opening speech, said that there's no if God exists, there is a purpose. If God doesn't exist, then there is no purpose to life. But then he clearly distinguished that's not an argument for the existence of God, and that's not what the debate's about. The debate's about morality. And then he did something which I initially thought was kind of, and I hate to say this about William Lane Craig, but it did seem like he was playing a bit of a dirty pool there, because he was kind of saying, well, we're not really here to talk about the existence of God, but here's why we can believe in God because of these arguments, the standard ones he always gives. He just gave the names of them. He didn't go through the arguments themselves. But then I realized, well, his argument is that yes, there is purpose because there is a God who has given us purpose. How do we know there's a God? Because of this. So I think that was not out of place, although I initially did. But now I see that that is an appropriate thing to do, because you can't say that we know there's purpose because we know God exists if we don't know God exists. So how do we know God exists? Well, the Kalam, etc., etc. Then the Jewish man, Rabbi Wolpe, and Doug Gibbett each gave their own arguments for the existence of God and said that morality is based on God's existence. Well, then in the rebuttals, various things of interest happened. The speech by William Lane Craig, the rebuttals I think were 3 minutes each. He said that in the on the atheist side, there was really two arguments. The problem of evil, that is, we're not living in the best of all possible worlds, which we would if God existed. That seemed to be the implication of the first atheist speech. And the argument from evolution, but he explained why the problem of evil wasn't. It is something that's important to think about and so on, but and he didn't really have time to get into a lot of details on this, but that there have been answers proposed to this and so on. And then with respect to evolution, he said it was a non sequitur to go from evolution to atheism because God could be behind evolution, um, and the so you've got those two arguments: the problem of evil and evolution, which evolution is irrelevant. Problem of evil, there's good answers for that. But then on the Christian side, he said that there were 10 arguments, some coming from him, some coming from the other people. And none of the people on the atheist side ever rebutted what William Lane Craig said on the theist side, and they never addressed his rebuttals to their arguments. So I don't know if they were just being dense or what, but it seemed they wanted to just kind of ignore all these 10 arguments and the rebuttals to their 2 arguments, and just kind of put words in the mouth of the Christian side, like, oh, you don't love your family, and I don't know, just setting up, creating the impression in the audience that these people were thought certain things that they did not say, trying to kind of rewrite the debate, what the religious speeches were saying and not saying, to kind of twist it to make it into a straw man. And I thought it was interesting some of the things that the audience clapped for when Richard Dawkins took the stand, or took the podium in the boxing ring. They just exploded into applause, but they didn't really do that for the other 5 people. But it seems to me that he's really. It seems as though people are under the impression that he really has something to say on this matter that makes sense and has some force to it, which really is like with his book, The God Delusion. There really wasn't anything to it. It was just ranting about stuff that didn't make any sense and didn't have any bearing on what Christians really believe as Christianity is actually practiced. So they clapped for that. They clapped for when the other guy, Ridley or whatever his name was, made he made a comment about the flying spaghetti monster. And they're like, oh yeah, this flying spaghetti monster, that's like the final nail in the coffin of Christianity. I don't know. I don't understand some of the stuff, but maybe you have to be really smart to get the special atheist logic down. But anyways, there is some more that I would like to say about this, but I'm almost out of time, so I'll have to make a second video for the opening statements and rebuttals and closing statements. Thank you.